Welcome to Behind the Knowledge, a best hour podcast where we dive deep into the lives and stories of inspiring coaches from all walks of life. The two hosts of this show are me, Pat Barber, and my good friend and fellow coach, Todd Occhiuto. Each week, we'll sit down with the most amazing coaches we can find, uncovering their unique paths, the challenges they've faced, and passions that continue to drive them. Whether you're a seasoned coach, an aspiring one, or simply somebody who likes listening to stories of how people achieve the success that they have, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be inspired by the powerful stories and insights from the world of coaching. This is Behind the Knowledge. Let's jump in. All right, welcome back to another episode of Behind the Knowledge. I'm here, as always, with Mr. Todd Occhiuto, the man, and we have the absolute pleasure of having Stephane Rochet, a name that I have pronounced many a time incorrectly every time I've read it, but it is an absolute honor to have him on the show. And I actually just want to start this off by saying, like, I've worked with a lot of flow masters over the years and people who have, run the seminars while I've been on staff. And I don't know what it is, Stefan. Like, you've always been super kind, but I have never been more nervous or like, I don't know what it was, but like something about your presence, like you've always so kind, but there was this, like, just behind the layer, there was like, dude, you got to do a good job for Stefan. And there was nothing you said or really did to do that. But I want you to know that was the presence you always held in my head. And maybe it was like, because you knew who I was and you just never let me steer incorrectly, because that was most likely going to happen if you gave me too much freedom. But like, I felt so much pressure to perform when I worked with you, and I was better because of that. But I want you to know that's where you sit in my heart. You continue to have that presence in my mind.
Well, I appreciate that, and you always did a great job. So it must have worked somehow. So I'm glad.
All right. Well, dude, hey, we're going to start this off with a lie. I love it.
Yeah.
Not at all.
So way we're going to start this off, though, is we want to hear your coaching journey. I mean, you've been in the game for a long time, even before you started doing CrossFit. Like, what was your very first coaching experiences coming up? Like, when you started coaching, whatever sport, whatever it might be. And then how did that influence, and like, what's the path? Like, where did you start and how did you first find CrossFit and go from there?
Man, I'm 52 years old. This could be a long story.
Let's do it. We got an hour.
I grew up in Canada. I was a basketball player at the University of Calgary, and I didn't have a lot of basketball skill. And when I graduated high school, I was about 6'4", 140 pounds. So I got steered very quickly to the weight room and messed around in there and tried to figure things out on my own. We didn't really have a strength coach. We were handed kind of a program. We had some older players trying to help us, but that was about it. And you learn a lot by making a lot of mistakes.
Yep.
With yourself and experimenting. Fast forward to graduate school. I went to Ohio University, the sports administration program, which the goal out of there is to become, like an athletic director at a college or something. Well, I just happened to run into the strength coach there. His name's Ethan Reeve. You can Google Ethan Reeve. He is probably one of the unsung heroes in strength and conditioning in this country. One of the best strength coaches out there. Just an amazing mind for strength and conditioning. And I just happened to run into him, and I asked if I could spend some time just watching him train athletes for the teams at Ohio University, and he let me do that. He also provided me with a lot of information. He handed me their philosophy. He had a graduate assistant teach me cleans and run me through the programs they were doing. So they spent a lot of time with me. And I started thinking, well, this is what this guy does for a living. This is unbelievable. So as grad school was finishing up, I started applying for internships at colleges to be an intern strength and conditioning coach. I probably applied, to 200 schools and never got anything. But I was lucky enough to actually get an internship with a supplement company called Metrex. I think they're still around, but back in the day, they were pretty big. So I was working in California for Metrex, and one of our customers was UCLA. Well, usually we'd ship product. We would just send it. We'd send it to USC. We'd send it to Michigan or whatever. But I personally delivered the product to UCLA with my resume on top
That's awesome.
of the stuff, and letting them know if they ever had an internship available, I'd be interested. Well, luckily, right before football camp was going to start in 1999, I am aging myself. One of their interns quit, and the guy called me and said, "Hey, can you start tomorrow?" And that was my first coaching job at UCLA as an intern for we worked with all the sports back then. It was a neat setup. I worked with football, I worked with a bunch of other teams, and then I had my own teams assigned to me: diving, golf, track and field, cross country runners, things like that. And one of the great things that happened there was another intern there was Josh Everett, and that's how we. And so.
Okay,
we spent 2 years.
Before we dig into all that, like I'm just like absolutely astounded by your like just general perseverance at that point in time. I don't know many of us who would send out 200 applications, get responded to negatively 200 times, and then be like, okay, I'm going to head in this direction, and then I'm going to figure out ways I can weasel my application. Like, where did that come from? Where did that drive come from to respond to the world that way? What's that history?
It's one of those things where when I saw this, I saw, I guess the drive has always been there. I've never been just automatically good at anything. Like for basketball, first game of basketball I played was probably as a junior in high school, and I was like, oh, this is a cool sport, but I had no idea what I was doing. So I went to a lot of basketball camps and I practiced a lot, and I was able to play in college. But every time I found something that I like, it's always been like, okay, but I'm not very good at it. So I have to practice. I have to work at it to get to a certain level where I can actually enjoy it. But when I saw this profession in practice from Coach Reeve, I knew immediately that's what I wanted to do. There was no doubt. There was like a light bulb moment. I said, this is what I've been looking for. Yeah. And so I don't think I realized how hard it was to get in initially. Luckily, I was young enough. I mean, I was older at the time, but I was going through grad school. I think I was 26 or 27 years old. But I was free enough to follow that path wherever it would take me. I didn't have a family. I wasn't stuck with a house, mortgage, all those things. So I was able to say, hey, I'll go anywhere for anyone, and I don't care what I'm making to do this job.
Right. And when you first started doing that internship, because you explained like that you normally just don't initially excel at what you do. And I think that's a human trait for the most part. I mean, to go back to Greg's words, we fail at the margins of our experience, right? But yeah, when you first start coaching in that internship, what does that look like, and how does that process go for you?
Well, one, it was a fire hose of information because you were assisting other coaches. So I was assisting the head strength coach with football. I was assisting another coach with baseball, things like that. And so you were just watching what they did and trying to emulate what they did. And you were grabbing their programs and taking things from their programs and just trying to get, how do you organize things? How do you set up your racks? Everything. I needed to learn everything. When I say this often with people I talk to, for my own teams, it was kind of a fake it till you make it. I have to be just one step ahead of my athletes. Like, I'm going to teach you something today, and then I'm going to go home and learn something that I'm going to teach you tomorrow. I just need to be able to teach it to you tomorrow, and then I'll learn again, and I'll just stay one step ahead of you. And that was the process. And as an example, I just barely learned the Olympic lifts, and so I was having trouble teaching them to my divers. And divers are like gymnasts. You tell them to do something, they do it perfectly, but they weren't getting it. And so I knew it was my fault. And so that led me down the path to seek out Olympic lifting mentorship, and that's what led me down to Coach Bergener.
Now, was your role mostly program design for them? Like, I had the opportunity to work with some college strength and conditioning coaches, and I didn't get a lot of teaching of the movement. It was kind of like, here's what it is, go ahead and do it. And so it sounds like you were doing more teaching than some of the ones I had the experience of dealing with. And so where did that come from your experience at Ohio, or was it from what they were doing at UCLA? And
a bit of both. I think that's what I saw at Ohio. They were very big on teaching the athletes how to move and coaching and constant coaching. And then that was reinforced at UCLA. You watched your athletes and you coached them. The program was an important part of what you did, and you took pride in the programs you wrote, but the execution of the program was most important.
Wow, that's cool.
Putting the exercises up. This is what we're going to do. Great, but now we're going to coach you from beginning to end. And it was always a system where the athletes would walk in, everybody was set, and then every step, warm up, every exercise in the warm up, every exercise through the workout and the cool down were all led by the coach.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome to have as a foundation.
So it was never like, okay, hey, grab your folders and go over there. A lot of schools do that. The kids will come in, they'll grab a folder, they partner up with their buddy, and then the strength coach kind of walks around and sees something and gives input here and there. No way. This was, okay, if we're doing the world's greatest stretch, I'm doing it with you. Right foot forward, left foot back, rotate, and it was to the letter. It was guiding the athletes through it, and I've always hung on to that method of coaching because it's I think it's the most important thing. I was thinking the other day, a poor plan properly executed trumps the best plan out there that doesn't see the light of day. So if you can, you might not be the world's greatest programmer, keep things simple, but really coach your athletes on the fundamentals, and you'll have tremendous success.
Especially with sports, right? It's like movement patterns are so critical. I actually met with a baseball player yesterday that had torn his ACL taking a break. He took a bad read on a fly ball, stopped and had to break in and tore his ACL. And I could watch the way they walked into the gym and was like, okay, your toes are turned out, your knees are turned in. No wonder you had a non-contact ACL tear, right? So just being able to teach athletes, especially at that age, how to move well. So I got to imagine when you went and started working with Coach B and saw the way that he managed groups, because Pat's talked about that a lot, of like that being the first experience of seeing a coach manage a group and coach an entire group of athletes, to where that was similar to what you were already doing. Is that right?
Similar, but I learned a lot. I learned a lot from presence and attitude and what Coach B is famous for and why he gets such great results. A phenomenal eye, phenomenal coach. He knows movement like nobody else, and he can coach it very quickly and at a very high level. But his athletes are motivated. They'll run through a wall for him. They'll do anything for him. And it's because how he coaches. He's hard. He doesn't give praise lightly, but when he gives it, you earned it. And he always finishes a session, even if you had a bad day. So, if I was lifting with him and I had a bad day, he's like, hey, man, you're doing great. These days happen, keep going. You're going to get there because you have all the skills you need. And he would always reinforce things to give you that confidence and to give you that motivation. He's a great people person. He's great with people, and that's an essential skill for a coach. Absolutely. And he does it very well. So I learned that from him and how he interacted with his athletes.
Yeah. His ability to make stuff that was complicated simple was the first version of that I'd seen. Cause I think so much of, and I just taught a level 1 last weekend. And there's so much of us who go out and we try to give the more complicated version of it because we understand that, hey, I see that you're doing this and I'd really like you to do this. And versus just telling you what to do over and over again. And I found the repetition from him, the simple repetition of hey, do this. Hey, do this. Hey, do this. And by the end, you're doing the actual movement. It wasn't so he had this end state vision and then he just told you the steps to take in order to get there versus I'm going to tell you everything that I'm looking for. It's no, just do this. Do this. It was so actionable. And so just like you said, personable. It was he held you accountable to your own shit. It was you step out of line, he'll tell you. And then, but more specifically, he'll tell you what to do right. It's not just don't do that. It's do this, do this, do this. It was mind blowing the first time I ever saw him coach. So yeah, I'm glad that you had a similar experience.
Yeah, he's got mastery, so he can talk Olympic lifting to the most complex, nuanced physics of the movement itself. But when he's coaching, He's just very direct. It's a master of work. You see the masters and coaches. So we all go through this evolution. We don't know what we're doing, then we learn what we're doing, and we want to show everybody that we learned and we know what we're doing. And then we come back down. We don't care what people think. We're just going to get you results. He's been there for a long time, where he just coaches it. He knows exactly what to say. He knows what cue to give. He knows how to progress the athlete. And when I went to see him, that's what I was looking for. Like, how do I teach these movements? And this young girl comes up. She's a volleyball player. She's kind of being drug up the driveway. If you've ever been to Coach Bergener's, it's a long driveway, and it gives you time to think about what you're about to get into. This father's dragging this girl up there. She's probably 15 years old. She doesn't want to be there, but immediately Coach Bergener puts her at ease, puts a light bar in her hands. She's never done, any of this before, and she's doing a high hang snatch in 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is what I need. This is what I need. And so I just soaked up the Bergener method, and then I used his same progression of teaching the snatch and the clean and the jerk with my athletes. And it was a huge pivotal moment for me, where one of my biggest weaknesses became one of my biggest strengths in teaching the Olympic this.
I think it's always been fascinating to listen to people try to take Bergener down because they talk about how simple it is and not how that doesn't apply to everyone and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, you're missing the point, buddy. Like, you're missing the point completely. You don't think Berg could go there if he wanted to? Of course he could. But he's doing this so that 99% can get amazing. Like it, and it's just like that level of mastery. Like you tell me how much you don't understand if you go to attack Berg on the method of his teaching. It cracks me up. Breaks my heart.
You look at where he came from. He was at high school. Yeah. He was at a high school, and like a blue collar high school. I mean, these kids were like skeptical and like, okay, you got to earn my trust. And if you looked at the record board at Rancho Buena Vista High School, there was kids, snatching 350, 370, or cleaning 350, 375, snatching over 300 pounds, back squatting over 500 pounds. I mean, the numbers, you walked in those numbers, these are collegiate numbers, and they all had impeccable technique, and they loved it. They enjoyed it. It was just a great environment. And then couple that with the fact that he's probably one of our most successful world coaches at the Pan Am, men and women, Pan Am Games, University Games, World Championships, things like that. He can do it all. So
what did that relationship look like as far as, like, obviously you're on campus, you're working with the athletes, and you're going there to learn how to teach these athletes? Like, were you going there every weekend? Was it like, how did you take that first visit and realize that's what I need to learn? How long did it take you to learn that, and how did you make that happen and to be able to take it back and apply it?
So Josh and I started going down there every weekend because Saturdays was max snatch, clean and jerk, and either a back squat or a front squat. That's what every Saturday was, and there'd be about 30 athletes there doing it. So we kind of joined that club and went down every weekend. And from there, I watched him coach other athletes, and it wasn't too long until Coach Bergener I also helped him teach his Olympic weightlifting course after a bit of time. So he was doing the USAW weightlifting course down at the school. So I'd help him coach that. So I'd soak that up and learn that stuff. And then very quickly he became CrossFit's Olympic lifting guru. And I was part of the team that helped put on those coaches. So all of that reinforced what we were doing. But really, I was able to take his method of coaching, because I watched him coach kids for probably, 2-3 months. And I was able to take that back and, again, just stay one step ahead of my athletes and very quickly start to implement that and use his teaching progression. I mean, basically what we did was we used the Bergener warm-up. When they had the Bergener warm-up dialed in with an empty bar or a light bar, then we went into high hang snatch. I'm a conservative coach, so I would stay at the high hang snatch. I mean, you think about my diving group, how they jump on a board, how they have to stay totally vertical. They were awesome at this. When I told them, hey, keep your torso vertical, you push your knees forward, they're like, yeah, we do this all the time. And then they would just snatch, and I was like, great, we're snatching. I don't really need to go too far from here. So they stayed there for a long time. They might stay there the whole time when we were doing snatches, but they picked it up very fast. And I noticed my athletes were picking it up very fast just by going through this progression, because I knew what to look for at each step of the progression. Progressions build on each other, and very quickly you had them at a high hang snatch. And then it was just a little bit of practice and timing to be able to build people down to the floor.
Okay. And so you get involved with Coach B, you're teaching some of his courses. Is it through him you get the first exposure to CrossFit? That's where you heard of CrossFit for the first time. And was that like you heard of it and then start dabbling, or you heard of it when you went to help him teach Olympic lifting to CrossFitters?
I had actually transitioned to a strength and conditioning job at Indiana University in 2001 after I was done at UCLA. And it was somewhere in that period of time, 2001 to 2003, because that's when I was at Indiana. So around 2002, maybe, we kept in contact, and I'd ask him questions. And he went to Notre Dame, so he has kind of a connection with Indiana. And so he was always interested in what was going on out there. And I got an email from him, and he said, "Hey, I met these guys, or I've been corresponding with these guys up in Northern California. They're kind of crazy, and this is some of the workouts they're doing." And so I'd look at the workouts, and he'd have me do the workout, and I'd send my time in, and then he'd have Josh do the workout, and he would send Josh my time. So then Josh would beat my time, and then he'd send it back to me, and we'd go back and forth until Josh got fed up with doing the workout and would set a time that I just looked at and said, "Okay, you win. That's fine. You got this one." So we were dabbling in CrossFit at Indiana University. And in fact, I was dealing with a great group of multi-athletes and pole vaulters at Indiana University. They were kind of my guinea pigs because they were very talented in the weight room, very strong pound for pound, men and women. And they think I invented CrossFit because I gave them these workouts and they were doing them. And then CrossFit comes along and be like, "Yeah, we've been doing this stuff forever." I didn't tell them it was CrossFit. But, so yeah, it was a lot of fun. So that was my first exposure to CrossFit. And then when I came back to California in 2003, that's around the time where CrossFit came down to see Coach Bergener to get to take his course, his USA weightlifting course. And I met Coach Glassman, I met Nicole Carroll, other people came down, and we put them through the course. And then I went back up. The invite was, "Okay, well, you guys come back up and take your level one." So I took my level one, I think in 04, so around that time.
And did you get involved? Like, were you all in at that point where it's like, hey, this CrossFit stuff, especially after the course, and I'm sure hearing Coach talk, you were like, all right, this is it, right? This is the kind of the missing piece maybe of what you've learned and like kind of glues everything together.
So I very quickly started, like even in Indiana, but very quickly started blending it in to what I was doing. Now I was a police officer at the time because when we kind of got fired out of Indiana when they made supervisor changes out there, I came back to California. This was another instance of 200 resumes that went unanswered, and so I went to Plan B, which was being a police officer. And that took about a year and a half to do. So I was a police officer in Newport Beach. Or actually, when I did my level one, I was preparing to go into the academy. And then I was a police officer for a while. And I did CrossFit with those guys. They'd come over to my house. SWAT team guys would come to my house. And they're like, "This is amazing." In fact, the first time they talked to me about CrossFit, I was at a SWAT training day. So when you're a young officer and you might want to be on the SWAT team, you go be one of the bad guys and just get shot at and get beaten up and stuff. And you keep your mouth shut, you keep your ears open, you do whatever they tell you to do. And we're at lunchtime and one guy's talking and goes, "Hey, you guys ever heard of CrossFit?" And I'm just putting my head down like, I'm not going to say a word. And they're talking back and forth. And then they looked at me and said, "Rochet, aren't you some kind of personal trainer? Do you know anything about CrossFit?" I was like, all right, I'll open up a little bit and talk about it. And from then on, we had a group that came over to the house. We did it at the station in a little gym there and stuff. And I had a real core group that were all into it. And that was a lot of fun.
That's awesome. And so then what happens? So you're a police officer, you're essentially training a handful of guys. And I would assume they're coming to the house to work out, but based on your background, you're probably teaching as much as you're working out. Would that be the case?
I would kind of lay it out and show them how to do stuff. And I guess I was the point of contact to learn how to do things, because they were motivated and they were good athletes. So they were doing it on their own in their own garage. But when he came over, they'd ask me questions and stuff, and I'd help out on that. And then the job at the University of San Diego, the head strength and conditioning job at the University of San Diego opened up, and I got the opportunity to interview, and I got it. And so I moved down to San Diego and started my career again as a strength and conditioning coach, and very quickly they were doing level ones at CrossFit San Diego back when it was Eddie Lugo's gym, and I had a bunch of med balls that I would drive down to augment his supply, so he had enough, because back then, hey, it was 50 to 60 people in there. And that's where I met Dave Castro. I was dropping off the med balls, and he talked. I think we might have. I don't know if he knew I got my level 1 before or what, but he asked, "Hey, would you ever be interested in doing this and coaching at the level 1?" I said, "Absolutely." And so I started coaching at the level 1s shortly thereafter. It was very different. It's very different than it is today. I gave my first deadlift lecture, probably my second course. And then Dave said, "Hey, you got the notes for this?" I was like, "No, I didn't.
No notes, right? I just made this up, right? I'm just telling you what I know.
I just told him what I knew about the deadlift."
Yeah.
And so, so it progressed from there. And then we ended up hosting a lot of courses at the University of San Diego. And it was just a blast. We'd have 70 people on a course. And it was just awesome. I loved it.
I remember doing some of those, because you had the combination of, you do big groups out in the gym and you bring them in and you do some lifting in the weight room. Sometimes we'd head down to the track and throw down. Like, we had summits there. We did pre-tests there. That was such a good, it was such a good facility to just like get destroyed in, because you had so many options. The gear was so nice, especially for the time. Like, there wasn't like the Rogues and Again Fasters and stuff. It was like, so you guys had all this premium stuff. That was a good time, man.
Yeah. It was cool, because that weight room, it took me a couple years, but I set it up like what you would walk in there and say, "Oh, this is like a CrossFit gym." So I'd seen what affiliates were doing. I looked at Eddie's gym at CrossFit San Diego, and when I got in, it was the traditional an alley of racks. Like, you guys have all seen that at a collegiate gym. It's an alley of racks, and there's some space over here and some machines and whatever, and dumbbells over there. I got rid of all the machines. I pushed all the racks out to the side and then connected them with pull-up bars all the way around. And when the kids came, I did that over a summer with the staff. We were there. We worked our butts off. And we did it over a summer. When the kids came back, they were like, "Holy crap, what is this?" And then we had a big open area in the middle, which we could put 70 people through Fran in 2 heats. And it was a blast. It was awesome.
And were you guys, at this point, were you doing CrossFit full-time with your athletes? Or like derivatives of CrossFit? Was that it? Or
exactly. So the thing about coaching, and people say, CrossFit's great for general fitness, but you can't use it with athletes. Constantly varied functional movements executed at high intensity is what everybody's been doing with athletes. Your variance piece is probably a little bit smaller, because you know exactly what you're training for. At the collegiate level, it's mostly power sports, so you can keep that a little bit lower. But over time, I did learn, hey, you got to expand that out in the off season to generate that nice base of aerobic capacity, so that now when you get into the more power stuff, you have a good base to support all that work. But maybe a little bit more limited. And I got to tell you, these kids are amazing athletes, but they're kids. And so in terms of their experience in the weight room, most of them, even the football players and basketball players, are novices. So we're not doing handstand push-ups. We're not doing muscle-ups. You'll have your athlete who's very interested in this stuff and can do it, but for the most part, we're staying pretty basic with the movement patterns, and probably not as high level as your CrossFit athletes, even in the Olympic list. So we'll do power clean, hang clean, power clean to a front squat. Some kids will get into just the full clean or the full snatch, but that's more rare. Usually there's not a huge emphasis on that stuff, but yeah, very CrossFit like. And then as I progressed, I'd have fun with teams that were really into into the weight room, and it just depended on the culture of that team. But like women's soccer was phenomenal. Women's basketball was amazing. The football team was great. Then I would do things where they would do CrossFit workouts. So usually the first one I exposed them to was Cindy. And I just had them move. I didn't put a clock on it, but then eventually they got the idea and I put a clock on it. We would do, things like the Chief. We would do CrossFit workouts, and they got to love them.
Yeah.
And then circling all the way back to Coach Reeve, one of his things that he was big on was he called it density training. Well, today we call it EMOMs. He loved work on the minute for athletes because he said that really kind of mimics a power sport where you go hard, you get a little bit of rest, and you go hard again. And we know today basically what you're replicating there is the ability to do fast bursts of intense work over and over and over and over. And that's really what you see in a lot of sports.
And so how would you, obviously the format's an EMOM, but what kind of movements, like what did that typically look like, and what was work to rest? And obviously, well, not obviously, but did that differ on the sport as well? I would think football, shorter time, more rest, right?
Yeah.
Something else, a little bit different. So what did that stuff look like?
Yeah, you're exactly right. So for a sport like soccer, I'm going to go 30 and 30. One of Coach Reeve's rules that I really stick by is you want at least 30 seconds of rest in this EMOM pattern at the shortest. So 30 seconds of rest. Otherwise, it kind of blends in. It's not really an EMOM anymore. You just work it. So for soccer, I'd extend that out to the 30 seconds of whatever they were doing. And it could be a goblet squat. It could be, a push-up, a ring row, lunges, box jumps, something like that. A whole mix of those as they go through. And then they get the 30 seconds rest. Basketball was probably a little bit shorter, more of a 20 seconds go. And for football, we were trying to keep that under 10 seconds. So 10 seconds roughly. So I'll give you an example. The conditioning test that I had, and I stole this from Coach Reeve, the conditioning test I had for my football team was 1 hour of power cleans. So it was some combination of 2 power cleans or a power clean and a hang clean on the minute for 60 minutes. And then we had a weight standard. So you'd look at your quarterbacks, your running backs, wide receivers would be at 225. Your, bigger guys, your fullbacks, your tight ends, some of these guys would be at 245. And then your big guys, D-line, O-line would be at 265. That's the weight they started at for the hour. So set 1, go, power clean, hang clean, or 2 power cleans, and then keep going because we're going to do this for 60 minutes. But I gave them the option in that time to increase their weight if they wanted. You feel good, add weight. And what you would see invariably is there would be kids who PR'd during this time, set 55, and all of a sudden they're at 325. And you're like, I've never seen you do that before. And then they would get it. So it was amazing. And if you look at that conditioning test, it is roughly the length of a play.
Right.
And then in a full game, offense, defense, you're going to get about 60 plays in. Now, but this is 60 plays without,
consecutive. Yeah,
without a halftime,
right,
without any breaks,
without offense, defense, switching this thing up. Yeah.
That was the conditioning test we had, and the guys loved it.
Dude,
that's the weight room erupted.
But that's the thing is so I would argue that some of that is a little bit missing from the programming we see at affiliates these days. So if you go back, and I've done this thing when we look at, I took Greg's first year and turned it into a little ebook. I went and had a VA grab it. I'll send it to you after this. It's pretty cool because it's just
that's awesome.
It's 2001 for February 2001 through the other one, and it's just all in like one ebook you can flip through. But it's just, you see some of the, and his writings are off to the side, so you can listen to his mind go through stuff, and it's like, because it's all in there in the archive, but it's kind of hard to access.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that fits in that hour time frame.
Absolutely.
That takes up the whole hour, and the styles of thinking and like the length of some of these training sessions and how it's pulled back is very different than what we see repeated over and over again at affiliates. And I think part of that is we've kind of maximized for intensity in a lot of the things that we do, which is good because especially when it's good in a lot of ways, because I think not everyone are athletes at a college where they're going to get training in 6 days a week and have maybe double days and be focused on everything. So they've got 3 days a week of training. They need to get the most bang for their buck. A 15-minute hard workout is probably going to be something that carries out into the rest of their life better than other stuff. But I do think that there is opportunity to rebuild back in, especially for the people who are coming 5-6 days a week, these longer, more endurance-based sessions that are work really hard for a very short period of time and then a lot of rest off. Like things like that exist in these longer time domains. They just don't filter their way in quite to affiliates these days. And I think it'd be really interesting to see ways that we could filter some of it back. Because I don't think it's the biggest lever to pull in terms of people's ability, but it's a fun one that brings a lot of excitement with it. Just like you said, in the weight room, like that whole thing, there's a psychology to it that's very different than like 20 workouts in a day.
Yeah, and I think that like the physical part of that would be a challenge, but the mental part of that and staying engaged for 60 minutes and like doing your first 10 sets and being like, cool, I got 50 more of these. Like there's something to be said with that. You know what I mean? Like that's like
I would mess with the teams and be like, hey, you're halfway to the halfway point. And they just laugh. So it is a lot of fun. And then, because coaches always need to do more, they'd be done and high-fiving. And I'd be like, oh no, we're going into overtime. And we'd roll out another whole set of drills. I remember we had a big garage door. I said, you got to go on a run. So they'd run down this hill, back up this big hill. And when they came now there's kettlebells and slam balls and all this other stuff set up. We went for another 15 minutes. But it was just, they were all into it. It was just fun. And when you set a culture and you tell them why you're doing this stuff and you coach them and you coach them with respect and you coach them with caring and you show, hey, I have your best interest at heart. Like I truly believe the reason we're doing this is because it's going to make you a better football, basketball, soccer, whatever player. It's going to prevent you from getting injured. It's going to help you excel at your sport, which is why you're here along with the school stuff. And they buy in. They buy in and they give you everything.
Are you a CrossFit coach who's feeling stuck in their development? You're not alone. Many coaches lack good guidance when it comes to how to develop as a coach. They either don't have strong examples they find themselves around, they may lack support from their gym owner, and they just feel unprepared going into their next credential. That's why we made the Knowledge Pro, to fill that gap. It's a mentorship program built for coaches like you. It uses the Knowledge Daily, our comprehensive video library, as well as extra content that we put directly into the Knowledge Pro on our live weekly calls twice a week to mentor you and get you to the next level of development. We've got progressions, we've got scales, we've got one-off tips and tricks, we've got full coached classes by level 4 coaches so you can see an example of what it means to do this job well. All of that will also be walked through each week on those live calls, so that you have a soundboard to bounce off of and a group of coaches looking to be better to help support you in your endeavors. Coaching isn't just knowing what to do. It's also knowing how to do it. And that takes 2 things. 1, an example, and 2, practice. Practice is on your end. You got to go out there and do it. We can help provide that example and the support with the Knowledge Pro. If you want to know more, click the link below and give the Knowledge Pro a shot. I look forward to seeing you on one of the next calls.
Yeah, that's huge. I think so much of that, even at the college level when I played, was like a lot of the strength and conditioning was kind of like a punishment. Hey, we're going to do this at 5 a.m. or 5:30 a.m. essentially to make sure you guys aren't doing what you shouldn't be doing the night before. And it's like, yeah, we're showing up for the sake of showing up, but we're not actually accomplishing anything. We're not making any gains. We're not doing anything, So I think that's huge.
Part of what you said there about like getting people to buy in through the way that you treat them, I think is foundational to running any affiliate, right? Being a coach at all. It's like, we get these questions often with all the coaches that we deal with that are like, how do I do it if the member doesn't want to? I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how have you not built a relationship where they trust that whatever you say is going to be the best option for them? And I think that, building that trust and being the type of person that whatever you do, they should feel and know that that's in their best interest. And I think it's a little different because you have to create it for people at an affiliate. Like you have to set that tone where they haven't like come to a school to do a sport. So they're like, I want to do whatever. But at the same time, I think it's almost easier because you have every first touch point. Like they're there voluntarily. They're paying you for it.
Absolutely.
Like, So like if you from the very beginning can set that tone of like, trust me, I'm here with your best interest, you can do all kinds of fun stuff. Like when you switch out for a 5K day, they don't quit the gym. Whereas like I get these people being like, if I don't do what my athletes say, they're going to leave. I'm like, what do you mean? Where has the trust missed there? So I love like, cause it's so fun. Like think about what you can do. like the little ones we send them when they come back in, it's an extra round. Like if they believe that you're not there to destroy them and you've built that respect, that mutual respect through the way that you treat them, it's like you can do anything as long as you have a good reason for it and it's well explained. So I love that you did that, and I'm big at that.
That's the thing. It's communication. It's talking. So at an affiliate, if people are coming in and you're coaching them, and you tell them why they're doing this stuff, and you're explaining it, and all this stuff, it's very rare that they push back, especially if you have discussions when they first come in. You're getting to know them, and this is a discussion. Well, how does this feel for you? How does this feel? Would you rather do this or this? Just so we get an idea where you are. And over time, they see how you work with them. That's that trust built with that. And very, very soon, like I said, they're all in. They're even willing to do things that they wouldn't have done before because now they trust you and they understand, hey, he thinks I can do this or he thinks I should do this. Let me give it a shot.
I think, and that can go in both ways, right? You can push them a little bit farther or pull the reins back and get the buy-in.
Yeah, exactly.
I do think there's a lot more noise nowadays than there was.
That's what I was going to say.
As people get more into this and they start watching and looking at social media, what other people are doing or what other, programs are doing, then I don't think they lose trust with you, but they start wondering, well, we're not doing that. What else is there? And so it's like, I always relate it back to that when somebody's pushing back of like, we should be doing more, we should be doing this. And I'm like, I've got to ask them that. Don't you trust me? When have I steered you wrong to this point? And they're like, oh yeah, I guess you're right. So I don't always know that those things are exactly lined up. I think nowadays it's a little bit different, but
I think it's much harder because people will come in with a preconceived notion about what to expect. Either maybe they've come from another gym or they themselves like to research. So I would agree with you, Todd, but I think that's where it goes back to us as coaches. We need to be more knowledgeable, like not to pull it back, but like we need to expand our education, our fundamental understanding of what we're doing so that when we get pushback, we can go, you know what? I've got your answer for you. Like it's right here. And inevitably there's going to be a time where you're like, I don't quite have your answer. Let me go find it. Like I've had that happen many, many times, but the underlying foundation of like, hey, this is why we do this. And this is exactly what this is. That needs to be solid. If you're going to have the trust of the people that you're working with, which is why we continue to develop. It's why you go take your level 2. It's why you go try to get your level 3. It's why you go take a level 4. It's like why you continue to put the time into this is so people can trust you. You're not just taking like a franchise and being like, here's the program, go through the stuff. It's like, no, you got to know this shit for people to actually trust you. And I think that's where does make it harder in today's day and age than when we first started because people had no idea. so it was like,
whoever said goes, right? If you're a coach, then you're the expert, no matter
like, all right,
how experienced they were.
Yeah.
And with that, I'd be curious to know, like, obviously you started this extremely early. You've done a ton with it, with seminars, working on the games department, doing different stuff, creating content for EDU and all the rest of that. Like, what's the biggest changes you think from when you were getting into it then and what you experienced with it now, and any of your thoughts there?
Yeah, it pretty much piggybacks on what you guys were saying. When we first started this, when I was first started doing the level 1s, it was maybe a little bit of a tense environment in the room.
Yeah.
Because you had people who were ready to call bullshit at any time. Yeah. They were there with like this thought, like, I'm going to check this out, but I don't feel these guys are crazy. Like they don't know what to talk about.
Defensive, right? You're like waiting for that to happen so I can prove to you you're wrong, right? Yeah, try it.
Yeah, let's bring it, because what Coach Glassman taught me and what Dave Castro and Nicole Carroll taught me stands the test of time. And I've seen thousands of people just do things that none of you can do yet. So I remember being at a level 1 with I'll say his name, Andy Stump. And there was a guy there, we went around the room and just kind of got to know some of the people. And one guy was real, standoffish. He said, well, I have 27 different fitness certifications. And I'm not sure I'm going to learn anything this weekend, but I just came here to see what this is about and to kind of write it off as something I don't really need to really pursue. And he took that and was like, oh, very gracious about it. The guy went out and we went to our first breakout group, which was the squats group, and he could neither air squat nor front squat, no overhead squat in any way. And when we came back from the break, Andy very diplomatically asked him, hey, how's it feel that you have these 27 fitness accreditations, but you can't do anything? How do you feel about that? And the guy was very humble and enjoyed the rest of the weekend. But people
he was humbled and
with
defensive
thought,
and like it didn't turn into a thing.
No, Andy had a way of handling people pretty well,
Okay.
and we all kind of laughed and chuckled, and the guy was very gracious for the rest of the weekend. But that's the thing, people had no idea back then.
Yeah.
And they thought what they saw at 24-hour fitness or wherever their global gym was the way it should be done. But they would leave that weekend, maybe not 100% bought in, but like eyes open and brain turning on stuff.
Yeah.
A few years later, man, the people we were getting were already all in. They were there because they loved CrossFit and they wanted to learn a lot more. I haven't done seminars in a long time, but I imagine it's very similar. The people are bought in. The difference I've seen though now for CrossFit in general is when CrossFit started, it was everything. And now there's all the other people who have their own way of doing it, and they're making money doing it. They're making a business out of it, and they're feeding off that. And, a lot of them poke at CrossFit and say my way's better and everything. So there's a lot more of that. So back to your guys' point, there's a lot of distractions from good old basic, just CrossFit. There's just, so many little variations, and to make yourself stand out, you have to have a niche, or you have to have your specialty thing. And that's how you sell yourself, whether that's really needed or not, or useful or not, compared to just old, foundational and the fundamental basics of CrossFit.
Well, Todd and I both still teach quite a bit of level ones, and it's like, it is a fascinating world because it's a refocusing back to the beginning, right? It's a refocusing to be like, this information has not changed, and it has stood the test of time. And when you lean on it, there's more depth than you understand. Oh, man. Because the harder you lean on this information, the more holes you try to poke in it, the deeper it goes. And that's the fascinating part about this. So what's been really fun, at least for me, is to figure out all these little niches that people have made and why they've made them, and put that out there to every seminar I teach. Is like, hey, bring your stuff. Tell me why, like, so you're almost inviting it back. Like, hey, tell me why what we're doing is slightly wrong. Because I really want to know why what we're doing is slightly wrong, and reinvigorate that passion for the like single focus directness of it all. And people buy in by the end of a 2-day course again.
Absolutely.
And so it's still really fun. It's actually more fun, I think, now than there was that middle part where whatever you said, people were just like, dude, I'm in. Let's go.
I'm in. Yeah.
There was those years. Let's do France. Why? I don't even care. We're good. Yeah. But these days you almost have to re-win them back onto the path.
Nice.
People they have this concept, but then you're like, hey, I hear what you're saying. Let's go here. And it's just like validate, but then redirect. And it's a fascinating world to get back to that beginning.
And you should have to do that. And the thing is, we can do that because our shit works. It just flat out works. Like you said, nothing's changed. You look at the articles written in 2003, and I'm reading one right now that I'm going to write a little article on. I mean, I love going back to the old writings and just kind of bringing them back, because nothing's changed. I don't have a spin on it. I don't have a change on it. I'm just saying this is really good. You should do this.
It's stuff you forget,
the nutrition stuff.
Oh, yeah. You look at that, it's going back and like reading the Glassman Chipper, you see all of this stuff, and it's like, man, it's been there forever. It's always been there. But I think to your point, it's okay that we go there, because I know I've gone through my journeys where it's like, oh man, I got really into this. This is great, but I like what this guy over here is saying, and that resonates. Either I like the way that he says it, or something about him makes me relate to him, so I'm going to follow what he does. And then I do it for a while and I'm like, wait, that didn't quite work the way I expected it to. Let me come back. And then I'm back here. And then I go and chase this other thing. And like, you wouldn't have the perspective you did if all I did was go straight down the road of CrossFit. I've got to deviate a little bit to learn, to reinforce that actually that straight road of CrossFit is all that is needed. And it's much more simple than we want to give it credit for, right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, and that's how I can speak with so much conviction. I've done the same thing. I've been down many, many, many rabbit holes and come on back. And that's the journey of a coach, right? You dabble, and then all of a sudden you find yourself back at the beginning at the fundamentals, the basics you were taught years ago. You're just much better at them.
right.
And you understand them more, and you understand why they're so important. And now you're a master.
I think one of the things that Greg did he did it explicitly, but it transcends, I think, even what we're doing is just the fact that he was so outcome based. He's like, it's not about what we're doing, it's about what it gives us. Like that's all of it. Like the whole thing is like, is this giving us the result that we want? Let's constantly re-examine that. And if so, then let's keep doing it. If not, then let's shift and pivot a little bit. But at this point in time, I think so many people are arguing the specifics of what they're currently doing rather than arguing the outcome, which is, and then we have to like get into, are we looking for the same outcome? And I think that's the fascinating thing. And like overlaying that to like almost anything you do in life. Hey, can we be outcome based rather than systems based? Because like we care less about the system than we do about the outcome. And then we just happen to have the best system for that. Oh, great. Cool. Let's stick back to the basics. It's been so fun. Yeah.
And I'd also say one thing about Coach Glassman was he was coaching. He had a group of phenomenal people out there. I mean, Nicole Carroll, Annie Sakamoto. You just look at the group he had out there, Greg Amundsen. He had his guinea pigs that he was actually coaching and watching how they were adapting to what he was putting down. Now, I'm not saying there aren't people still doing that, but you get these online coaches who write programs. They're not coaching anyone, or they're sending them out to their clients and looking at results, but they don't see it. They don't understand. They weren't there. I think that's a big piece that is missing from a lot of those online programs is actually, who are you coaching through this to understand the adaptation and how it affects them.
Yeah. I would argue you have to have that in person with normal people because you have to see on a daily, you have to interact with them to see how that goes down. I think you can make a more of an argument for a competitor because you can control their volume so much more aggressively and the nuance of what they're doing. So you can just look at numbers and see how it's playing out. But I would say even that would be done better in person. And the outcome is you're looking for a very different thing. One is looking just for dominance of numbers, and the other one's looking for quality of life. And it's just like those are such different paths.
I think quality of movement and efficiency is so big there too. It's like that's just missed. I mean, and of course, right? But that's another big miss, right? Is some people just look at those numbers and like, oh, numbers are going this direction. I'm like, yeah, but you move like garbage. Imagine where they'd go if you were a little more efficient with your movement. Man.
Yeah. I went to a shooting course recently, and it reminded me of exactly that point. So if you just accept your garbage movement, there is a time when you're a novice where your garbage movement will beat better technique. You let your back start to round, you let your knees come in, you can lift more, you can move faster, and you're better. But you're going to plateau somewhere. And it was the same at the shooting course. They had us shooting slowly in a cadence. And it was hard to have a cadence. And so we were much slower than if we just said, I'm just going to slap the trigger and go fast. And then the guy stopped us and he said, here's the reason I'm teaching you how to do it in a cadence. Because only by understanding that can you do this. And he just shot so fast. He said, you'll never get to here if you don't understand this. And I was like, I know what you're saying, because that's exactly the same in the gym. It's the same thing where all of a sudden, I fast forward 2 years and that guy who's got that bad technique is in the same spot,
He's still
a
there.
little bit more broken down.
Yep.
Still just pushing against that plateau. And the people who listened are miles ahead, not a little bit ahead, but miles ahead. And it's a big deal. And to me, that's the value of a coach in an affiliate. Being able to make that difference right there is unbelievable.
Well, I think too, there's also outliers who will just be gifted in general, and they'll be like, no, this works for everyone. And you're like, no, No, it doesn't.
No.
Because you're a freak. Yeah.
You're
No.
a freak. But I do appreciate your perspective in an attempt to make money there. But do you remember the old Todd, were you around for the old development of athletes tree that would be drawn at level ones?
Oh, yeah.
So you'd have the branches off. So it's like you're heading up with like this good technique, and then you shoot off and you deviate. And in order for you to get back up here, you have to come back to center and then
to
do the whole thing.
Yeah.
That was part of that whole initial was that in what was that? Was that in technique? It must have been a technique
lecture.
Yeah. Good fun, man. Well, we could keep going forever, but I don't want to take your entire day. We might have to do a part 2 of this because I think we got to like when you just started doing CrossFit and just started teaching.
I told you I'm old, man.
You've got another 20, another 15 years before we get to here, and this time. But like, I just want to kind of finish it off with. I'm curious, what do you want for the future of CrossFit? Like, if you see it as a program moving forward, like, what do you want for it? And yeah, I have my thought, but I'd love to hear yours.
I want CrossFit to obviously keep going the way it's been going with the affiliates. So I work for CrossFit HQ, and I think that CrossFit HQ, our job or our role is to highlight the CrossFit methodology so people understand how powerful it is, the comprehensive program that it is that gives you this full, broad, general, inclusive fitness, includes the nutrition piece in there, and can make such an unbelievable change and impact and transformation on your fitness. If we could show the world that in a way that makes people say, "Why? I know there's a CrossFit gym just down the road. Maybe I'll just go through the front door and see what's going on there."
Yeah.
That to me, that's my goal for the coming years, is to see, and I don't know if I'll ever know how many people I'm influencing, but just to influence people to make that first step into that through that front door to their affiliate. And then the second piece of it is the education piece that we provide. Because now when they walk through that front door, what they're finding is a very knowledgeable, skilled coach who is going to deliver on those results that we talk about. So putting those two pieces together, HQ's understanding of the education piece and highlighting, what the methodology can do, and then highlighting our affiliates. I just want to see CrossFit grow, because we're in a period of time right now where there's two things going on. There's a health crisis, and there's also, I believe, an isolation crisis, in that more and more time is going to be spent on devices, alone, separated from actual contact with people. And I believe the hub of health and also community could be your CrossFit gym in your area. And that's where you're going to interact with people, and that's where you're going to make sure that you're able to live a good quality life.
Yeah. I love it. I just recently stumbled across someone who was talking about addiction, and one of the main things of overcoming addiction is community. And very rarely will you ever do that. A lot of it faith-based, but at the same time, like, to overcome something like addiction to the device and creating social contracts around just being better in general when it comes to health, I think CrossFit's, like we've said before, are the beacon in this sea of misinformation and kind of garbage of what's great. And I also want to commend you, if you have anything to do with it, the continued education that's coming out from the CrossFit. Like, I'm loving finally seeing those examples. It takes me back to when you were first learning, the very first coaches you had, you got to shadow them, you got to watch them, you got to see them coach. That sets you up for success in everything that you did. And I think up till recently, there hasn't been those great examples easily accessible to our community. And to see those more and more often, it's something we've tried to do at the Knowledge, and we've been stoked to be able to do so. And HQ is doing now too, and I'm freaking stoked on it, because it's just the more versions of like more video that's just raw, like, this is what it looks like to be great, like, the better. Like, people will walk into gyms and be like, this is the expectation, this is what I have to be, this is what I'm going to get. I think it's just huge. And to see CrossFit doing more of it, I think it'll have the impact that you're looking for. So we're stoked.
Yeah, it's I mean, the teams we have there, led by Nicole Carroll, Dave Castro. So people who know CrossFit and have been there since the beginning. And then guys like Eric O'Connor, Nicole Christensen, Melanie Dizon is just working so hard to start a YouTube channel for training and everything. You got Chuck and Todd Woodman. I mean, the people involved in this have the knowledge, have the communication skills, and have the love for it and the love for people that will make it successful. And if we can just get it out, you know, now you're talking about the process and the system. You gotta be able to get it out to people, and that's getting so much better. So yeah, it's awesome.
Ironic that we have to keep them on their devices in order for them to learn this, huh?
I know. Watch this YouTube. Spend a couple hours on YouTube, and then we'll fix it in the gym.
Then put it down and go work out. Then put it down and go work out.
Well,
that's classic.
If I don't know if you're accessible in any way, but like if people wanted to find you, where do they do so? Or are you hidden?
Yeah, I'm not a social media guy myself, but you know, I'm sure they can find my email online or something.
Fair enough.
You know, Stephane.Rochet@CrossFit.com.
There we
Shoot
go.
him a message and say, how do I change the world? He'll let you know.
CrossFit training YouTube page too. Yeah, I
love
the videos you're putting out there.
And here's a way that would touch my heart if they wanted to interact, and then we could do it offline. But I've been writing some articles that usually get posted for the email of the day on rest days. So right now that's Thursday and Sunday for CrossFit. So an article I write, if you want to put a comment in there and, hey, disagree, totally fine. Add your own viewpoint, awesome. Or, you know, just some thoughts or questions, please do so. I will respond for sure. And then if we need to have a longer discussion, we can carry that on offline for sure.
Hell yeah.
Love it.
Well, thank you, Stefan. Really appreciate the time, man.
You guys are awesome. I enjoy this every time.
Yep. Thanks, man. Thanks for checking out this episode of Behind the Knowledge. Now, if you want help developing your coaching and to learn from us directly, check out the Knowledge Pro. There we host live calls with our coaches every week where we discuss content together and work on skills to improve our on-the-floor coaching ability. To learn more, you can head over to besthouroftheday.com/theknowledge. And if you found this content helpful, we're going to be releasing new episodes every week, so subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.